Is League of Legends actually the most power corrupt game in existence?
Okay, so first of all, no. World of Warcraft has got to be surely the most power crept, the competitive multiplayer game. That game has changed so much from the beginning. But I feel like you're asking, does League have power creep and is it a problem? And I think objectively, League obviously has power creep. You look at the state of the game in 2011, 2012, you look at the state of the game now, it is a dramatically different video game.
Every time that a new set of mechanics are added to the game, a new character, a new item, it gradually phases out the old ones and becomes stronger, right? That's like the basic, like you Google it and it tells you what the definition. When we talk about power creep in League of Legends, it feels like we're talking about it more than any other game. I don't mean that means that it's the most power crept, but it feels like people talk about it in League of Legends more. That I do think is a value, is something you can sort of take for granted. What do I mean by that? The last time they added a gun in Counter-Strike was 10 years ago, right? So like, yeah, they buff things, they nerf things. The M4A1S gets really broken at one patch. The op gets nerfed. Like, yes, things happen but they happen every 3 years and the game never really changes, right? So talking about power creep in Counter-Strike would be like useless.
It would be like if they're like, oh, the AK has like an underbarrel shotgun now.
Yeah.
And a scope.
Yes.
Yeah. That would be their power creeping the AK.
Yeah.
It gets to do everything.
The AK needs a dash.
Yeah.
It has a hard stun, but it needs a dash too. Yeah. The rate and frequency with which they add in League of Legends is so high for obvious reasons. They want new content. They want people to keep that. They are dealing with this conversation a lot because you have whatever it is, 4 champions a year or whatever the actual number is, right? It's more than basically any other game that I can think of that is of this kind. Maybe like,
well, Valorant's following in its footsteps.
But keep in mind, and there is a returns thing here, like because Valorant has so many fewer agents than League of Legends has champions, there is an impetus for a newer game to really get things in there. Because it's like when Rainbow Six came out and they were releasing like whatever the was 6 to 8 operators a year,
yeah.
Because they needed to get from like 10 to like 50.
And I got to the point where like I think they tried to like avoid power creep in Siege by just like making the newer operators just do like different variations of things that are already in the game rather than introducing things that are like net new and could break it.
And they did also reduce the frequency.
But I also feel like you guys started by saying there's no game that changes as much as League and then immediately named 2 other games. I also think when you're talking about League,
still changes as much as League.
But when you're talking about League, the rate of change in League, I don't think should be compared to a game like Counter-Strike, which is almost an aberration in how little it changes.
I agree.
It's very unusual.
It is, yes.
You're comparing it to Fortnite, right? You're comparing it to modern games as a service that are constantly getting a funnel of new content. I also think rate of change is something they care about a lot.
But League pretends to be, and I'm going to be a little memey for a second, but like League pretends to be a super serious esport with a Worlds, and Fortnite does not at all. Balance really matters. It's got to be the tightest thing possible. As opposed to game as a service, we need 4 champions every year, right? Because we have to keep the casual average player playing. Right.
Well, I think it's obviously both. I think
League
is a game as a service video game.
Yes.
I think they need casual players for the scene to stay alive. But I also think it is a competitive esport, and you can't be throwing around the word pretend.
I'm saying pretend because like League of Legends obviously wants above all to be a business.
Does League of Legends change all the time? Obviously it does. I feel like the interesting question here is that actually a problem for the game? And when you were defining power creep, you said that power creep is about new characters or new mechanics being released that basically make old ones obsolete, right? That make the old characters start to fall behind. And I think what's interesting about League is like that is increasingly not true. The characters that are old and haven't had major reworks are still competitively relevant. Last year at Worlds, I had the chance to talk to Froxon about power creep, and the first example that sprang to mind for him was Jax, right?
Yeah, Jax
is one of the OG champions. He's been in the game from the very beginning.
So busted.
And Froxon said to my face, if we put Jax out today, the community would complain. They would be like, wow, every new character's broken. Look, what do you mean he's got this dodge? What do you mean he's got this mobility and this damage and he can be this tanky? What do you mean his ult is so powerful? Like, there would be this discussion if Jax was was released today, and he's one of the original champions. The way they think about the game isn't so much in terms of like release date diff or power creep. It's about simple versus complex champions, right? So there are champions that are really straightforward, like Garen, right? And sometimes those champions fall out of favor because more complex champions are more meta. But I don't actually necessarily think it's true that every time a new champion comes out in League, it renders the old ones obsolete. I think maybe there was an era where that was more true a few years ago, but Riot has reworked almost all those characters, right? And I think
some of the reworks have not been major. Like the Jax rework was extremely soft.
Barely
touch.
a rework.
Barely.
Right?
They're just the ultimate.
There's a scale of how reworked the champion is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was going through the list of champions this morning, and like the number of champions from like 2009 or 2010 that haven't changed at all is actually like pretty small. And all those champions are still more or less relevant today. And so like, I think you look at the balance of the game.
Can we name a champion from 2009 who is not still really good?
But so is it release date diff if all these champions from 2009 are really good?
I don't think so. I think that, like, I think actually we're going to disagree on a lot, but I think this is the one thing we don't disagree on. I think that the idea that power creep is the problem in League is a huge misnomer. It has f***ing problems, but I don't think power creep is the issue.
I think of all the characters that exist from back in the day that Riot like really want to be competitively relevant, they all are. And what fluctuates is meta. And you know, things will shift and things will be more or less relevant depending on what's meta right now. But that's a pretty crazy accomplishment for a game with 171 characters.
How many champions are there now?
100. Yunara's 171, I think, right? Because
that is f***ing disgusting.
It's gross, I know.
Is a lot. But so
no, it's not a lot.
No, it's disgusting.
It's too many.
It's gross. This is kind of what I meant earlier. I don't want to catch up. This is what I meant earlier when I said, like, yes, I understand it's Worlds. I understand it's a real esport. I'm not. But the reason I was is because, like, they so far past the point of, like, well, maybe if we wanted to keep the game, like, reasonably, like, they passed it f***ing 50 champions ago. Like, we are so far into the territory now of just, like, this is a f***ing Mario Kart-esque, just f*** it and go, we ball, right?
And you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like, it's because people have bought in skins for these characters and put money into these characters. So it's not really like, you know, if they were to do League of Legends 2, they basically just have to do like a
Seraphine has been removed from the game.
That's what I mean. Like, they can't do that.
They're not going to remove champions.
171 is it's outrageous. I just don't like the redundancy of like having characters that like nobody picks, or trying to get people to go back to the game, because, you know, I play ARAM every once in a while with my brother, but like I couldn't actually imagine playing a real game because I have no idea what these 170 characters, I have no idea what 100 of them do.
There's a really high burden of knowledge to get into League, and it's a huge problem in terms of bringing in new players. Riot's super aware of it. There's really no getting around that. Like, at a certain point, if you're gonna try to get good at League, right? Like, if you're gonna play ranked to League of Legends, at some point you're gonna have to learn what every character does. You could get pretty far without knowing like every single character's like abilities and passives and stuff. But it is a problem. Like, it's definitely a challenge in terms of bringing in new players. And I think when you're talking about the size of the cast and the complexity of the cast, that for me is actually the biggest problem, is that it is so difficult to get new players to come into the game and learn this massive, you know, get this PhD in League of Legends that you need to like play the game at a really high level. I do see that as a problem, and I think it's a really tough one to overcome. I think in terms of balance, Riot does a surprisingly good job. Like, when you look,
I actually don't disagree with you.
It's just too many, and I know like that's my only argument right now. And to be fair, I understand that it's a good thing in a lot of ways. It gets people back to the game, you know, however often they release game, 4 a year.
I'd say it's been roughly 4 a year on average.
I would love to know, and I will let you finish, I would love to know what that number actually is with releasing content, and I'm sure Riot has these numbers because like they have to care about this at a high level. What is the retention? How much of is releasing new champions to keep existing players, and how much of it is to actually get new players? Because if you don't play League,
it's not about new players.
Exactly.
Anymore.
If you don't play League of Legends, like, you don't really play, right? And you hear 170 champions.
Now we got 171.
And now we have 171. You're like, oh, great. Now I want to go check out that new champ. Obviously not.
There has to be something else you can do as a company. I mean this with love and respect. It feels lazy. It feels lazy to release characters because you don't know what else to do.
I feel like the core question now, to your point, Devin, is like, we're at 171 today.
Yeah.
That's a massive number. And I think that when you talk about like, is it lazy, or you talk about the way that Riot's releasing content, honestly, the way they're releasing content now doesn't feel that way to me as a player.
That I agree with you, is that they aren't lazy now, but they were too hungry to get more players in 10 years ago.
Yeah,
and
I do think that was a mistake. And I think if you asked a lot of Rioters now, I haven't asked this specific question, but I think if you talk to a lot of Rioters now, like, how do you feel about that choice? Like, first of all, a lot of them weren't at the company in 2012, right? But they would say like, yeah, if I had a do-over, I probably wouldn't do it that way again.
One regard in which I do think League does suffer from power creep in a way that is egregious, like in a way that does go beyond just the natural power creep that every game has. When you make 170 champions, at some point you're going to run out of ideas for things to do, and you need to come up with new ideas. That's fine. That's literally how we make new content, how we make the game spicy. There are things that Riot have chosen to implement into the game because of how many champions there are, how much CC there is, how much of this there is, how much that there is, right? That over time got instantiated as like new mechanics that I think are very unhealthy and bad for the game.
Such as?
The poster child for me is invulnerability. And by invulnerability, I literally mean, I'll give like specific abilities. I mean
You mean unstoppable?
No, I mean the Xayah ult. She is out of the map for 2 whole seconds, and then she Fizz when he does his invulnerable in the real sense. Like, you are untargetable. You're actually out of
Reyna's.
Yeah, her exactly, the Reyna thing. Yeah. And we have Evelyn, we have Viego, we have Xayah, we have Fizz. Like, it's not just one champion, and it's like, oh, that's their thing. They get the. It's a lot of them. I think it's a lazy mechanic that, and I'll just say the word. I think it's lazy. I think it's honestly they're better than that, and I think that the game it makes for some very, very frustrating and uninteractive game design that can make a lot of the older champions, or just the champions in general, they don't have to be older, right? Yeah. Feel very, very, very powerless in an extreme, to your point about Yuumi, in a really like unfun way.
When I think about League and I think about power creep, I know you said, Devin, they're never going to do League 2, and like I think they are never going to do League 2, but I think there kind of is League 2 and we are playing it.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
Clearly there was
4.
No one is arguing with like in the early days of League, it was like League and Dota, and we were figuring out what a MOBA even was, and it was like champions were coming out left and right, and there was obviously a point in time where Riot started to hone in on like what League of Legends is, right? On these high skill expression, like I know you don't like all the dashes in League, but Riot started to look at the things that the players found really fun and the things that were keeping people sticking around, and they were like, we're going to all in on this design direction, for better or for worse, right? I think if you were to ask these guys now, you know, are you casually putting in vulnerabilities into the game? The answer is like, absolutely not.
If you actually look at the champions in the last 5 years of the game, there's a lot of champions who actually at some part of their kit is invulnerable, unstoppable. Yone's ultimate is unstoppable, right? You can read it, you can telegraph it, doesn't matter. He'll get it. If he gets it off, he gets it off. Cassante's W is unstoppable, right? Viego has invulnerability on his reset, right? There's actually a lot of champions in the past 5 years, right? Because Viego's 2021, I think Yone was also 2021, right? Yeah. Up to Cassante, it was inexcusable. It was inexcusable. It was insane. And I think that they're also now deviating from this pattern that they've set, right? I think that Riot are, to this day, still very afraid of people having a bad time when they play their game. I don't think that Riot likes the idea, and have never liked the idea, of there being champion interactions. Like, I'm even speaking at a deeper level than like counters per se. Interactions that are just unplayable. They don't like the idea.
There's so many. What do you mean?
No, like the idea of there being hard counters in League of Legends is like unheard of. Like there's so few actual hard counters.
I disagree. I think ultimately you and I just don't play this game at a high level, but you look at high level.
But that's crazy, because if you're saying that like no, but if you're saying that, this is what I mean. Like, this is still a soft counter. If you're saying that if Chovy's playing this hero and Faker's playing this hero,
that's what I'm saying.
One of them is unplayable, that's a laughable definition of unplayable.
I'm saying if I play against a high diamond player is playing certain matchups and certain interactions happen, it's pretty unplayable. Like, you'll see lanes get just absolutely blasted in high elo solo queue. It sounds like what we're saying is that obviously there's power creep in League of Legends. From my perspective, a lot of the power creep, like a lot of the classic things people complain about, is what makes League of Legends good. It's why the game is good. And I think from your perspective, as someone who like loves a lot of other games that are in a similar style, like especially Dota, but other games as well, you sort of see it as a problem. I think I sort of see it as like the DNA of like why League has had so much longevity.
My issue with League is not to do with power creep, really. Yeah, there are a few examples, and I use Yone as an example as someone who plays him a lot. Like, I think that he is a power crept champion. The vast majority of the champions are just annoying to play against, and it's very rare that you play against an Ezreal where you have the fantasy that is both very, very fun and fulfilling to actuate. Like, when you're hitting your spells as Ezreal, it's the best feeling in the world. You feel like you're deft, and you're like, dude, this is so cool. This champion is honest, he's skillful, he's awesome, he's potent, he's good, he's played at a really high level really well, he's played at a low level. Like, this is the best, this is awesome. And if you die to Ezreal, you're never gonna be like, smash a coffee mug, this is so stupid. No, he's awesome. That's more uncommon in League of Legends than I think most other games. I think that the Lee Sins, the Threshes, and the Ezreals are pretty fucking hard to come by, honestly. And a lot of the time, when people play against characters in League of Legends, they get very upset at how, myself included, at how unfun the fantasy is to be on the other side of. Yeah. I think that's a problem, and I think it's a big problem that I wish they took more seriously. However, I don't think it's an issue of power creep. Not really. I think it's a misnomer to think it's a power creep issue.